What is going on, guys? So I thought I'd continue the theme of my last video. If you haven't seen that one, definitely check it out. It's all about the hypocrisy of feminists and social justice warriors who want equality for everything, even though they already have it. And when they do get equality in terms of, when they attack a man and the man actually retaliates, which is gender equality, right? They don't like it. So I just wanted to highlight the total hypocrisy that these people bring to the table. And this next video that I want to post here kind of goes over that again. This one deals with the safe spaces that these social justice warriors have brought into modern society. I'm sure everyone's heard of these by now. Basically, if they disagree with the speaker in a debate, or they're having a university lecture, or some public place that they feel threatened by the words that are being used, they seem to need a safe space, in their words, to go back to and I guess feel safe, right? And it's complete hypocrisy when you think about it, because these social justice warriors are generally these completely radical protesters that are screaming and shouting racial slurs and just going completely nuts, right? But when somebody debates them and says something that they don't like because it goes against what they believe, they need to retreat back to a safe space. And by the way, these are the same people that say that certain words should be banned. And if they truly believe that, I suggest that they go back and read George Orwell's 1984 and take a refresher course on Room 101. So it's completely stupid. Everybody who's a free thinker, has rational minds, is capable of independent thought, generally what MGTOW people are. We know that this is complete bullshit, and I just want to call it out for what it is, right? This is complete and utter nonsense, and it's got to stop, right? So hopefully the more people that are aware of this kind of thing and that understand that it's complete lunacy, the less that it will gain traction, right? So that's my goal, and hopefully it works. So if you guys enjoy the video, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.
So, Rabia, just to get everybody on the same page here, can you explain what it is we're talking about when we talk about safe spaces?
Yeah, so in this conversation with safe spaces, we're going to talk about two different types of safe spaces. And so first is a safe space in the classroom. And that is basically allowing any student that's there with any sort of identity, any sort of background that they have, to be able to have a free flow of ideas. And the second sort of safe space we're talking about is a actual physical safe location for different identity groups. So for example, a student who is from the LGBT community will have a safe space on campus, which is kind of like a room that everybody else who is from that same community can come and get together, can organize. And right now on campus, we actually have 6 of those safe spaces. It's the RSU Equity Service Centers, and those are free from anybody who does not identify with that community to not enter that, and let that be kind of like one room on campus, aside from this whole huge campus, to just organize basically.
So you're the VP of Equity for the Ryerson Students Union, and you mentioned these equity centers, and you also mentioned that they're for these specific community groups.
Yeah.
What does that mean for these specific community groups? Does that mean that other community groups are excluded, or is it more of just a spot for these groups to meet? Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So it is basically a room on campus. That's what it is. It's like a room probably smaller than this, where they can talk about any sort of issues that community is facing. And so the thing with creating solutions or events or anything with certain communities is to have people who are from that community themselves come and do the organizing, come and do the talking, come and do the solution making basically. And if we look at the whole campus itself, anybody is allowed to access it wherever. So for one group who is marginalized, who is oppressed, to ask for one room on campus just to organize, just to have that as kind of a safe space away from any sort of oppression or trigger, I don't think that would be too much to ask for. And so, for example, if there's an organizing meeting, I think it should be respected that if you don't come from that actual group, that you just let these people organize and create whichever events or anything that they want to do.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Dan, to loop you in, just to kind of catch everybody up who's watching, the Ryersonian ran a story on some comments that you made 2 weeks ago regarding these safe spaces that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And you're the VP of Corporate Relations for Ryerson's Marketing Association, and you've been involved in student politics this year.
I'm also on the RSU as well.
Right. Exactly. So these comments included things like, just to quote, is, "Please, if you need a safe space, go home. You can be safe there. And I'm growing sick of this childish nonsense. I didn't pay thousands of dollars to be coddled like a little bitch. I am not going to take it anymore, and neither should you." What was kind of the inciting factor,
Yeah.
you know, for these comments? And
Absolutely.
why now?
Well, first of all, the reason I had to kind of use, you know, such profane language was, you know, to get a voice, to get me on stage, and look where I am now. We're talking about these issues, and to allude to the point where, you know, you go home, you can be safe there. I wasn't referring specifically to people who have abusive environments at home. You know, we have channels and platforms where those people are taken care of. I was referring to people who simply don't have the emotional maturity to be in a university, an institution of higher learning. We're not running a daycare center here, okay? This is a university where you go to see differing viewpoints, and to be scrubbing the campus clean of differing viewpoints, of dissenting, you know, political discourse, things like that, is really the antithesis of what a university is supposed to be. You know, students, I've had a vast majority of students who are afraid, some of them are here, who are afraid themselves to speak up and talk about certain things because of the intimidation, the bullying. It's really a bully tactic. It's not about being nice, it's about control. This is what this whole movement is about. And I really think that it's quite regressive. They say it's progressive, and Rabbi, you said it's a solution. Well, I actually think it's a symptom of a larger problem of extreme political correctness. It's not a solution at all. When you're segregating these people off, you're basically, you know, this ideology doesn't want people as individuals, they want them as the identity. Black, white, brown, straight, gay, whatever. They want to put you in that bucket. They want to teach you what to think. They don't want to teach you how to think. It goes back to the days of Socrates. We used to teach people how to think critically. Now we're teaching them what to think. We're teaching them to have a very thin skin. We should be teaching people to have a thick skin. I mean, it's a tough world out there. And to be productive members of society and to fight for a better world, we need to have a thick skin. And it's really regressive, I think, these policies are.
So I guess to speak to that point, you know, Rabia, you know, there's criticism, I guess, in the general public that these safe spaces kind of, you know, they create echo chambers and they inhibit, you know, these critical conversations from reaching the people that need to hear them. Do you think that's a fair assessment? You know, do you think what Dan's saying is a fair assessment? Is there a way to combat that?
So again, a lot of people come from very different walks of life and experience very, very different things, right? You can't expect somebody to have a thick skin because that's how society works, right? You can't expect that. There are people who emotionally can't, physically can't, they just can't do it. And to expect them because that's how society works, you should not be blaming that person for not being able to do that. Maybe it's another look on society.
So you're saying they're immature, is what you're saying. They're too immature, is what you're saying.
You cannot equate that to immaturity, though.
Well, it's emotional immaturity.
Well, let's
Sorry, yeah, you cannot, because sure, you may have a lot of great things that you can accomplish. You may have a really good support system. You may have a safe space at home kind of thing. A lot of students do not have that, and they carry that burden on them every time because they don't have supports, maybe on campus, maybe outside, maybe in the home, to basically help them with that. And the thing is, you can't expect them to overnight just to have that sort of ideology.
No, you're right, and that's why I think that.
So to speak to that point, I guess, to bring that back to you.
No, for sure, it's a good point.
You know, these safe spaces, these spots on campus, they are, you know, you're a member of an exec team on campus. I'm sure that you have these, you know, private closed-door meetings that, you know, only your exec can be privy to. And Rabia, I'm sure that, you know, the RSU
well, it's an
exec
educational
board does
function,
too.
but your point is made.
So, you know, likewise in the newsroom, you know, we have the same kind of things where there are only Ryersonian staff involved.
Sure.
And this isn't because we're attempting to, you know, exclude people, but it's so that we can get to the heart of what the issues that our organizations needs to be focusing on and dealing with. Okay. And we're all on the same page on that, I'm imagining. But what is the difference, I guess, in your opinion?
Well, let me address
what
you're saying. Is the difference with, you know, something like an educational meeting and one of these meetings is that we're actually teaching people, like I said, putting them into buckets, teaching them to be victims. We're opening the door for victimhood, and when you teach that, it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. People.
But what happens when they actually are victims and they are actually working towards creating a different environment where they themselves don't have to be the victim anymore?
That's a good thing, and that that should be something we should be emphasizing. See, the people on the left, they're obsessed with equal outcome when they should be equal outcome of the collective, their herd mentality. They should be focused on equal opportunity of the individual, of individual rights. These people have individual rights. They're individuals with individual skill sets. This mentality, this ideology that you're proposing is herd mentality. You're collectivizing people. And, you know, what made our society so great is the individual, not the collective. That's like other stuff. That's like Soviet Union stuff. And it's leading down a very slippery slope. When you're censoring free speech on campus, when you claim to be the VP Equity, but when you're kicking out...
Well, she is the VP Equity.
Well, you're claiming to be equal. When you're kicking out white students because of the color of their skin at a racialized students collective, having that policy on the books,
but when
that's not very good.
Themselves are, like when white students themselves are not racialized. I don't
How do you know that? You're racializing me right now by saying I can't go to these spaces.
So see, that's another thing. There's a lot of learning and unlearning that I see that you need to do.
You need to do the learning.
No.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
so to tamper down and step back, you know, the conversation around these safe spaces and where they're places on campus, you know, it is obviously a sensitive issue, as we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, that doesn't mean, you know, that the criticism and being talked about in a critical way isn't necessary. Looking forward, you know, what can we as a school community, you know, do to ensure that we're treating this issue with the sensitivity and the tact that is required when we're questioning these issues? What can we do?
So a lot of the Equity Service Centers actually hold a lot of events where any student on campus can come and learn about why these Equity Service Centers exist and why these students have issues and why these issues are valid.
Okay.
Right? And so what I do is I ask anybody who kind of questions why these centers exist to please come out to these events and actually try and learn with an open mind. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm listening to what you say. I'm a business student, I totally, like, I can understand where you're coming from, but I can be critical of a lot of things that you say, the same that you're going to be critical with a lot of things that I say. But again, just try and learn. Hear the other person out of why they are collecting, like why they're
Well, no, I do totally
right?
understand what you're saying, but I'm actually saying that it's working against the goal of what you're trying to achieve. Because again, you're fulfilling the self-fulfilling prophecy. You're obsessed with equal outcome of the collective, but you should be focusing on the individual rights and the equal opportunity of the individual. Not outcome, opportunity is what you should be focusing on. And
I don't get it. Can you be a little more
Yeah.
specific? Yeah, I'm totally lost
I
on
think
that.
just like re-clarify what you're
what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that, you know, it's the herd mentality, right? Like everybody who's in one group, they put them in the bucket of you know, whatever segment is, say it's straight or white. You put them in the bucket, you teach them, now they're in this bucket, now they're part of this collective, and now the collective is taught what to think and, you know, what to get offended by. And, you know, you see people all over campus that are of these, you know, racialized or are of different demographics, but they don't need the safe space because they're smarter than that. They are more emotionally mature.
See, that's the thing. You can't tell people what safe space they do and do not need. That's on their own self to ask if they
Well,
need a
you're
safe
right.
space.
We've created
right?
a society where people need safe spaces, and you're absolutely right. And I think that we need to reverse these steps. So I think the first step is we should restructure these safe spaces so people still have an opportunity to speak about their issues. I think that's important. I think we should restructure these safe spaces into student groups so the potential for abuse is removed. The potential for abuse of segregation is removed. We can't be segregating students with public funds.
For abuse kind of, what are you
The
speaking
potential
to
for
when you speak
abuse is
about
at a safe space. You know, you have the two white kids in the event, the Racialized Students Collective, getting kicked out. See, I don't find that acceptable. And as a VP Equity, you should be, you know, totally outraged by that.
Not really, because if it's talking about, can you please not make noises back there? Anyway, so if you are talking about issues that racialized students face, right? If I am talking in a classroom, there's going to be white people, black people, everybody around, and they can listen, right? If I want to talk specific issues that racialized students face, I do not think that white people need to be in that space. Because racialization is people who are other than white. That's what being racialized is.
So you're basically drawing a battle
issue.
line between.
That's
you know,
the thing. Like,
what I see is happening is that they're demonizing white people.
Well, okay,
They're
just to
drawing
clarify,
battle lines.
back up. When you know we've heard kind of what the response is. So Dan, what would you propose?
Yeah,
then
no,
as
great
the,
question.
As the
Great
fix,
question,
kind
though.
of, you know, what are you saying you want to see happen to these safe spaces in the future?
It can't be done overnight. These people have become dependent on these safe spaces. So we should have a place. I believe that they would be better called student groups than safe spaces. You know, a lot of people think safe spaces are ridiculous. If you go into the real world, they're all talking about it. It actually discredits the value of the university.
Going out into the real world.
I think that
we
should restructure the safe space into student groups so people still have a platform to talk about their issues.
Okay.
I think that we could both agree on that. So you agree that, you know, people should be able to speak about their issues. I agree on that as well.
100%.
And I think that, you know, restructuring them would get rid of a lot of the problems and a lot of the stigma around the safe spaces because, again, it's discrediting the university by, you know, basically turning the university into a daycare center. And I think it's totally regressive. It's not progressive at all.
Okay, so I guess to end off, you know, Rabia, do you want to rebut any of that?
yeah, I guess another thing to ask is who are the people that actually have these problems? That's what I want to know.
Sorry?
Who are the people that have these problems?
Have what problems?
Right, problems with safe spaces. It's people who do not access safe spaces. That's the thing, it's people who do not need safe spaces.
Well, it's an issue of free speech in society.
But see, that's the thing. We have free speech, but there's a limit to that free speech. If your free speech is impeding on somebody's right to exist, impeding on somebody's right to basically
There's no limits to
say
free
whatever
speech
they
in a free country. This is something that's a fundamental
If
disagreement.
you say something discriminatory against me as being a woman, being a Muslim woman as well, you do not have that right to
I
free
have the
speech.
right
That's
to do it.
being-
Within the law, I do have that right. So you need to read the Constitution.
Oh, I think you
But
do as
there-
well.
You're right, you're
Again,
right.
there's
There
a
is
lot of
difference-
protections.
okay,
There is
okay.
a
There's a lot
difference
of
between
protections.
harassment.
Okay.
I don't agree with harassment,
Yep.
but I agree with free speech. And people need to realize I don't agree with hate speech, but hate speech is free speech to an extent. If you're harassing or threatening someone, I don't agree with that. I'm not a mean person. Like you say, the idea is I don't care about these people because I'm denouncing safe spaces. It's the opposite. I care about these people, and I think that the safe spaces are working against the end goal. When you're segregating yourselves off into ever shrinking subsets of the population, you're actually being regressive. You're not being progressive at all.
Okay.
Is there any last leaving closing point? We've heard from Dan on where he wants to leave. Where do you want to leave off with
Again,
this?
the thing I want to end off with is that you're basically speaking on behalf of people who need safe spaces and telling them what is good for them. I do not have the right to tell the LGBT community what's good for them because I'm not from the community. I have no right to tell them what to do.
Well, I have the right to say whatever I want, really.
You do, but it depends on who's listening. If
Not
they
really.
don't,
It
it
doesn't
says
depend.
they don't have to
Fair point.
listen.
That's what
speech.
Rabia
They
finished
don't.
what she's saying.
Yeah, they don't have to listen to you. Most likely will not. They will keep on organizing. Racialized people will keep on organizing.
So, okay,
I
thank
just
you.
want one
we're-
rebuttal to that point.
Well, I think
So
we've
if they're not
reached our
listening
time
to what
limit,
I'm
so we're
saying,
going to say, I think we've
then why do
reached
they
our
care
time
about what other
limit.
people say? If they're not listening to what I'm saying,
Dan,
why
we've
are they
reached
so
our
effective?
time limit. So
Okay.
thank you both for joining us today. We really look forward to continuing this discussion, further on campus. But thank you so much for taking the
Thank you.
time to talk
Thank
to
you,
us.
Rabia.